I got another Calgary Flames trade retrospect video to add into the playlist, but it was actually 17 years ago tonight that you could say it turned out to be a significant trade that the Calgary Flames made. But at the time when the trade was made, we didn't think much of it, as it wasn't a huge trade at all, and it pretty much fulfilled the need that the Calgary Flames needed at the time. While the team that was trading to Calgary, they had an abundance in that position. I'm talking about the time when we traded for Miikka Kiprusoff. Yeah, we got Kipper 17 years ago tonight. And at the time when we acquired Miikka Kiprusoff, it would have been crazy to think back then that we would have acquired a franchise goalie that ultimately, for the next decade, became one of the best goalies to ever play for the Calgary Flames. And what did we had to sacrifice and trade to get Miikka Kiprusoff 17 years ago tonight? Just a second round draft pick in 2005. So that's what I'll talk about in this video. And I would say to throw in a Charlie Brown reference for the case of the San Jose Sharks, who we made the trade with to get Miikka Kiprusoff. They didn't necessarily get a rock either, but I could probably say we did win the trade outright, especially immediately. If you go all the way back till we always marvel at the 2003-4 season that the Calgary Flames ultimately finally got themselves back into the playoffs for the first time in 8 seasons, and then ultimately went on to get to the Stanley Cup Finals in the Vesa Toskala. A few moments played out differently. We should have won the Stanley Cup. And Miikka Kiprusoff ultimately turned out to be one of the key pieces of the Calgary Flames that season. But if you go back to 17 years ago tonight, the Calgary Flames were so-so. They were flirting, around mediocrity, 500. We looked like we were a little bit of a better team, but not too sure yet if we would think we would make a run to get into the playoffs and go into the Stanley Cup at the time, as the Calgary Flames were in the midst of their, at that time, the longest playoff drought, and the fact that this was the first full season that the Calgary Flames were under head coach Daryl Sutter, who ultimately took over as general manager after the 2002-03 season. As the season before, that was the season when Calgary moved on from Greg Gilbert, and Al McNeil, I'd say, did a great job as head coach for a couple weeks before Daryl Sutter came in. But I would think Daryl Sutter's knowledge from the San Jose Sharks paid off in this trade, especially now as general manager. Why the Calgary Flames needed a goalie? Well, we had put in all our faith in Roman Turek after the previous general manager, Craig Button, who we acquired Roman Turek at draft day back in 2001, and part of the package when we traded away Freddie Brathwaite. Remember the Freddie craze that we had? Well, we got Roman Turek, and then we signed that huge deal. Well, he was hurt. And then at the other time, the other goalies that we had in the system was Noodles, Jamie McLennan. You have the same Jamie McLennan that you see on TSN. I heard his nickname is Noodles because he loved having, cup soup noodles on the bus during junior hockey, so it stuck. And then Calgary was stuck playing Dany Sabourin, who was with the Flames system from at the time at the farm team. However, Dany Sabourin, I would say, barely, was a middling backup at best. And Roman Turek was hurt, and Jamie McLennan, I remember at one point of that season, he was barely standing on a leg. So the Calgary Flames were looking to seek an upgrade in net to at least, say competitive. Well, if you go to the San Jose Sharks, going into the 2003-04 season, the San Jose Sharks, they had a embarrassment of riches in net, that they had 3 goalies, and you can only have 2 goalies. And at that time, Evgeni Nabakov was the starter. And then Miikka Kiprusoff and Vesa Toskala were battling out for the backup position. And ultimately, Vesa Toskala won out, so Miikka Kiprusoff was the odd goalie out. So the Calgary Flames made the trade, and it was, I actually remember that night, because I remember back when I was in college, I was still in college at the time, that the Calgary Flames, I think I remember we lost that game 2-1 in overtime, and I was working I was a security guard at the time, and actually at the time I was working a night shift at Marble Mall just to patrol the mall. And I also remember that night too, was that season back when the Fan 960 had the overtime call-in show, and I remember occasionally I actually did call and talk to Rob Kerr, and at that time I was also defending Jerome McGillen why the Flames should keep him. But after that game, after that trade happened, I was like, oh, we got Miikka Kiprusoff. At the time I thought, that sounds like an interesting Finnish name for a goalie. And I was saying, well, Daryl Sutter must have been familiar with him from his time in San Jose. And then we needed a goalie at the time, and it ultimately pushed off the decision because Roman Turek was hurt, Jamie McLennan was barely hurt. And actually, when Miikka Kiprusoff came in, he did pay me at Devlin, so I looked back on game stats. His first game at home against the Montreal Canadiens, he played solid and won 2-1. I did see a game that he allowed 6 goals a couple games later. But we were thinking at the time, oh, this is Kipper. We just needed another proven goalie to, get us through and hopefully make the playoffs. And then the crazy thing is, Kipper definitely played well going into the new year, and then he got hurt for 6 weeks, just in time for Roman Turek to come back from his injury. So Calgary had Jamie McLennan and Roman Turek. And then ultimately, when Miikka Kiprusoff came back, it showed that he was no fluke. As I'll go over his numbers, that you almost have to wonder, did he find something in Calgary when he got traded from San Jose to Calgary that suddenly he found his way, and you could say the rest is history. But ultimately, when we got into the stretch drive, going into the 2003-04 season, we won games down the stretch. At that trade deadline, the Calgary Flames had to make a decision in net because now Calgary had too many goalies. And you could say one of the pieces that we got in for the Stanley Cup Finals run, well, he was hurt for half the time, was we had a package where we traded Jamie McLennan to the New York Rangers, and we brought in Chris Simon. Unfortunately, Chris Simon was hurt during the second and third rounds, but he did play in a little bit in the Vancouver series, and he came back in time for the Stanley Cup Finals. But that's not way of asset management. So that's just my backstory on getting Miikka Kiprusoff that season. And you can say the rest is history, that we got into the playoffs finally for the first time in 8 years for 2004. Fittingly, in Kiprusoff fashion, it was a shutout. I believe it was Game 80 against the Phoenix Coyotes that the Calgary Flames were a couple games left. It was like, oh, we just need one more point in the stands, and finally we'll just get into the playoffs. And I remember hearing Peter Marr, and he yelled, "Yeah, baby," for the first time in years, and I was like, wow, that's what he sounds like. And won that emotional series against Vancouver. Kiprusoff was a huge part in that. He was definitely a huge part in outdoing Curtis Joseph in the Detroit series where he pulled off the upset. And then interestingly, we played the San Jose Sharks in the conference championship that year. The team that traded him away to Calgary. And we won against the San Jose Sharks within their third string goalie, who found a home here in Calgary. And then, like I say, unfortunately, we could not finish the deal off against the Tampa Bay Lightning. You could probably say we also ran out of gas, too. If I look back at that 2004 run, I would think if we would have finished off the San Jose Sharks, let's say in 5 games, and had a few more days of rest, because Tampa Bay and Philadelphia, they needed all 7 games in the conference championship. I think that could have helped Calgary as well. I'm just thinking that in retrospect. But still, it was an amazing run. And then we had the lockout short season, and then to prove that it was no fluke, Miikka Kiprusoff won the Vesa Trophy and the William James Trophy in the 2006-07 as the top goalie with the goals against average. So you didn't think to go 17 years ago that Miikka Kiprusoff, we got a franchise goalie just by trading a second round pick. You could probably say this was the best second round pick we've ever spent. As Daryl Sutter loved trading away second round picks, but this time it was a grand slam home run and slam dunk hole at the same time when we got him. Miikka Kiprusoff, if you look back, he was drafted 116th overall by the San Jose Sharks. He played only with the San Jose Sharks and with the Calgary Flames in the NHL. 116th overall, so he wasn't a top 10 pick. You could say, if you look back at that 1995 draft, Jerome McGinley and Miikka Kiprusoff, if he redid that draft, they'd be drafted 1 and 2 now. And we had both those players for much of their career. He also did say he also played with TPS at the Finnish SM Liga as well. He played for the AKIF and Tamar Iki of Swedish Estellarin, if I said it right. I know he played in Sweden during the lockout shortened season, but he played professionally from 1994 to 2013. As the last season that Miikka Kiprusoff played for the Calgary Flames was the 2012-13 season. I know he had one more year left on his contract because he did sign a 6-year deal that I think it paid him around $35 million, but he was going to make 24 of that in 3 years. And you could say he had his strong play during that time, but that was at the time when Calgary had great defense, great goaltending, and then I think he did play a lot of games for the Calgary Flames, but we didn't have much offense at the time, and we always kept falling just short of making the playoffs, unfortunately, those years. And then the 12-13 season was the lockout short season where it was the end of the era that Calgary needed to rebuild, and that's when we traded away Jarome Iginla and Miikka Kiprusoff. Apparently, he was rumored to be going to the Toronto Maple Leafs for the 2013 season, and he felt he wanted to stay here at the time. I believe he had a young kid on the way, and just felt like he wanted to stay in Calgary. I also joke too that maybe the other reason why Miikka Kiprusoff did not go to the Toronto Maple Leafs was, I remember if you're going back to listen to the Fan 960, Mike Richards in the morning, he actually came to Calgary just after we knocked off San Jose in the playoff run. That's when he started. And then he was here until 2011 before he went to TSN Radio in Toronto. And one of his joke things that he did was he likes to call Miikka Kiprusoff in the morning after game day and makes fun of his Finnish accent. And, Kipper goes on a Finnish tangent that, I thought that maybe the reason why Miikka Kiprusoff did not want to go to Toronto was he knew that Mike Richards was in Toronto and he didn't want to be called early moving over to Toronto again. That's kind of the other reason too, but at that time I think the consensus was that he was going to not play that last season of the contract, which you could say only paid him $1.5 million, but that's basically much of Kiprusoff during his time in the NHL. But it's these career stats. That kind of blows me away that he didn't make his NHL debut until the 2000-2001 season, where he played in 5 games with the San Jose Sharks. It was 2-1, but nothing much said. And then the 0-1-2 season, he did play 20 games with the San Jose Sharks. He was 7-6-3, which at the time they still had ties. He had 2 shutouts, so he showed some. And his goals against average was .249 and .915 save percentage in the second season. But the season before, in the 2-3 season, before he came to Calgary, he played in 22 games. He was actually 5-14 that season with a .325 goals against average, 1 shutout, and an .879 save percentage. So his numbers were mediocre at best with the San Jose Sharks, but he wasn't the starter. But then his first season when he came to Calgary, and he didn't play in the NHL until he got to Calgary. He played in 22 games, or 38 games for the Calgary Flames in the 2003-04 season. He was hurt for 6 of those weeks as well. This is when he really made an impression. He was 24-10-4. He had a .933 save percentage and a goals against average of 1.69, and with 4 shutouts. Definitely, that led the league at the time. And then the season where he won the Vezina Trophy in the 5-6 season, he played in 74 games. He was 42-20-11 with overtime shootout with a .207 goals against average, 10 shutouts. So and definitely is with a .923 save percentage. So he definitely showed that it was no fluke. And then since then, his best season, 08-09, he played 76 games as well. He played 45. He was 45-24-5, and his goals against average was a .284, 4 shutouts, and a .903 save percentage. So he had 3 seasons, or 4 seasons, or at the least 35 wins. Or I think his worst win total is after the 03-04 season was 35 games in the 11-12 season, which was the last full season before the lockout. In the 12-13 season, which wasn't his best season, he also spent some time with injury. But overall, in the NHL in 12 seasons, and he played 623 games. He was 319 wins, 213 losses, 79 overtime shootout losses, and then overall, his save percentage was .912, 249 goals against average, with 44 shutouts. But with the Calgary Flames, because that was just his overall, he played in 576 games in 9 seasons. He has 305 wins, which is a franchise best, 192 losses, 98 overtime shield losses, and then he had a .913 save percentage, a 246 goals against average, with 41 shutouts, and that's also a franchise record. I would say enough that Miikka Kiprusoff should have his number 34 retired by the Calgary Flames, but I'm not too sure if you would put him in the Hockey Hall of Fame. I mean, he does have, Vezina, William Jennings. He did only play one All-Star game. He only wanted to play in one All-Star game. I mean, considering he played over 70 games. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 seasons in a row. 8 of 9 seasons, or of that, he played with the Calgary Flames. The only season he didn't play over 70 games was the season that we got him, and the lockout shortened season. So he definitely played a lot. He also played in the Olympics, where he won a bronze in Vancouver, and he was the runner-up when the World Cup hockey in 2004, where he dragged Finland to the finals but lost to Canada. So that shows that Kipper, he was for real once he came to Calgary, and that's just his regular season numbers. I mean, his playoff numbers overall, actually, he made his debut in the Stanley Cup playoffs in 2001. Fittingly, interestingly, in 2001, when Miikka Kiprusoff played in net for the San Jose Sharks, the San Jose Sharks were playing the St. Louis Blues in that series, and Roman Turek was on the other side of the ice. Though they knew that 3 years later they were going to be teammates with the Calgary Flames in the 2004 playoffs, but he only played in 4 playoff games with the San Jose Sharks, 1 and 2, and he was 1 and 1. But with the Calgary Flames, I mean, the season that we went all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals, he played in 26 games. He was 15 and 11, and his goals against average was 185 with 5 shutouts and a .928 save percentage. And I believe that playoff run, I'm not too sure if it's been broken since, but he set a Stanley Cup playoff record at the time because we played 26 out of the possible 28 games. In the Stanley Cup playoffs for minutes played, he had 1,655 minutes played in that playoff run. And I mean, overall with the Calgary Flames, in 5 seasons that we got to be in the playoffs, in 04 and then 6, 7, 8, 9, we didn't make the playoffs after that since Kipper was here. He played 52 games. He was 24-27 for the Calgary Flames. Overall, he had a .920 save percentage and a .234 goals against average with 6 shutouts. I mean, the other shutout he got was during the Calgary Flames series in 2008 when we did play the San Jose Sharks. However, we were on the wrong end of that one. So, I mean, it's amazing to think that 17 years ago, the Calgary Flames got Miikka Kiprusoff, and only a trade was a second-round pick, and didn't think at that time. I mean, even I was crazy. Even if me, as crazy as thing is, yeah, we acquired a franchise goalie and went to give a second-round pick. If I said that then, people would really think I was loony at the time with the Calgary Flames, but that's ultimately what happened. And then I just felt how the Flames got into the playoffs in 2004, and how Kipper was playing, how Ginla was playing, with all the pieces that we had. I actually did say to Rob Kirk, I made a bold predictions that we're going to the finals this year. And it actually happened. Too bad we just didn't win the Stanley Cup, but oh well, it was still fun. And I would say we've had the best tandem since, but I think coming into this season, the 2021 season, the tandem with Jacob Markstrom and David Rittich, I'm going to say that's probably the best tandem that Calgary has on paper since when we had Miikka Kiprusoff and Roman Turek, when he eventually decided to know that he was going to be the backup to Miikka Kiprusoff. And if that lockout didn't happen, Roman Turek might have actually still stayed in North America for a few more years, because he actually agreed to restructure his contract and then take less money, knowing that it would help the team. That was before the salary cap came in, but then we had the lockout and he went back home and hasn't been in the NHL since then. But in some way, Roman Turek I mean, I would think that we overpaid him a little too much, especially when he came here and had a great 6 weeks, and then there was kind of a lot of hate with him during that 03-04 season. Then he got hurt, but I think if he didn't get hurt, this trade wouldn't have happened, and alternate universe time. But then the pick that the San Jose Sharks got in that trade, they also, I'm going to say, going back to the Charlie Brown reference, they didn't necessarily get a rock. I would say the Calgary Flames won this trade big time, especially immediate dividends with going to the Stanley Cup Finals and getting the Vesa Trophy and having a franchise goalie for 10 years, and it's been 7 seasons since we got a stud goalie until we signed Jacob Markstrom in free agency. Well, the San Jose Sharks used that pick on Marc-Edouard Vlasic, a solid stay-at-home defenseman that, he's getting towards the tail end of his career, and then when you have Brent Burns and Erik Karlsson on your defense, they're the top 2 in San Jose. I'm going to say the San Jose Sharks did pretty well with that pick, considering at the time Kiprusoff was the third string goalie, that they had too many goalies, and we needed a goalie because we had one goalie who was hurt and another who was barely standing on one leg. And then ultimately it played immediate dividends. It ultimately was the 35th overall pick. Marc-Edouard Vlasic, if you look at his career stats, he's only played with the San Jose Sharks his entire career. After the 2019-20 season, he has actually played 1,035 games. He scored 72 goals, 254 assists for 326 points overall, and then he played in 142 playoff games, all with the San Jose Sharks, with 6 goals, 33 assists for 39 points. So I'm going to say Calgary won the trade, but San Jose did not get a rock either in getting Marc-Edouard Vlasic for being a long-time stud defenseman. And then speaking of defensemen, well, their Miikka Kiprusoff actually had a brother, and I believe his name is Miikka Kiprusoff. He did briefly spend some time with the Montreal Canadiens and New York Islanders, but he didn't have as successful of a career as Miikka did. And I know that at the time when he was still at the San Jose Sharks, he did show some promise at the AHL level with the, I believe it was the Kentucky Thunderbirds. At the time, it was their farm team. I know the parent team was in Kentucky, but Kipper did show some promise down there, but I think it was until he came to Calgary. Something clicked with him when he came to Calgary, and thankfully he did. And you could also thank the fact that Daryl Sutter was familiar with him back with the San Jose days. And, we needed a goalie, and San Jose had too many. So we got him, and he made the most of his opportunity. And I would say memories that I have of Kipper obviously was the 2004 playoff run. And then, backing up with the next season where he won the Vezina Trophy, and to date is the only Calgary Flame goalie to win the Vezina Trophy. And I'd probably say he could have still won the Stanley Cup 2004 if things played out differently. I would say, you could debate who's the best goalie the Calgary Flames ever had. Mike Vernon was the first goalie that Calgary had. We won the Stanley Cup with him. His number 30 is retired. I definitely got to say, Miikka Kiprusoff should get his number 34 retired with the Calgary Flames. And a couple more points that I'll talk to before the wrap up this video. I know last season, it was the 40th season of the Calgary Flames, there was speculation, let's say if the Calgary Flames ever decided to retire his number. A lot of consensus from fans. We're thinking that he wouldn't show up to his own ceremony. Because even though Kipper was as great of a goalie as he was, he didn't say much to the media. I know he you could understand him in English with his Finnish accent, but you never get any colorful, out of ordinary sound bites from him. He's a soft-spoken person. When we had Jerome McGinley and Craig Conroy on the Flames, they would give you a treasure trove of sound bites. But how I always remember Kipper is that, his spectacular saves, especially the Scorpion, and how he was a steady influence in that for the Calgary Flames, but he didn't say much. He always tended to sneak out the back door at the end of the season so he can go back home to go fishing in Finland and then come back to Calgary in time for training camp and do his thing. But going back to last season, there was one game that Miikka Kiprusoff was in attendance, and they showed a video clip of him and indicated that he was in the press box and he waved. And I was thinking, that changed my perspective that if the Flames actually decided to retire his number, he he would actually show up. I don't think he would have as long of a speech on the podium. He'd probably barely wave to the fans. And he'd probably say something like, thank you. It was an honor to play for Calgary Flames and have my number retired. Thank you. And they'd probably walk off because he did get inducted into the Finland Hockey Hall of Fame. And I think he only said like 6 words. But, I think he would actually come. I mean, the one thing that I thought he was missing was he wasn't at Jerome McGinley's retirement ceremony when they retired his number 12. Even though Jerome McGinley did single out Miikka Kiprusoff in the speech, he singled out Rob McGear, Craig Conroy, and Miikka Kiprusoff for the longest that he played his whole time with the Calgary Flames. I didn't see Kipper at the ceremony. I'm not too sure. Maybe he wasn't available, but he deserves to have his 34 retired. But I'm not too sure if he is a Hockey Hall of Famer. And then I did take in the 2011 Heritage Classic and for my jersey collection. Of course, I got the, it's a little small for me to wear it, but I got the Heritage Classic jersey. But I got a Ginla and I got one of Kiprusoff, as he also was the first goalie in NHL history to record a shutout in an outdoor game. I know Jonas Hiller did that in the Stadium Series for the then Anaheim Ducks, and finally Jonas Hiller ultimately became a Calgary Flame. But that's all my take on just talking about the trade of Miikka Kiprusoff to get back into filling out a video in my trade retrospect. There was definitely a lot to say about Miikka Kiprusoff, but you could say he's there with Mike Vernon, the best goalie that the Calgary Flames ever had. They didn't think at the time, 17 years ago tonight, that the Calgary Flames would just part with a second-round pick, got Miikka Kiprusoff, and it kind of first looked like it was just a goalie that we acquired. The thing about Daryl had some insights on him when he was coach of San Jose, but we needed someone right away, and he provided goaltending right away, and he delivered. I think going back to the 03-04 season, I think he won like 16 out of 19 games or something like that in a row. Something ridiculous like that, and it was a breath of fresh air when we got him. It was like, we have a chance with Kipper, and and that exciting run to the Stanley Cup Finals. But I just say, what do you think of this trade? I mean, I had a lot to say about Miikka Kiprusoff, but he did a lot for the Calgary Flames in 10 seasons, and too bad we did not win the Stanley Cup. But thanks for all the memories, and hopefully you'll come back to Calgary at least a couple more times when you get your 34 retired. Maybe just to say hi to the fans. It was a pleasure to play with the Calgary Flames, and just enjoy your fishing back in Finland. And if I ever go to Finland, I know Helsinki is the capital, but I gotta go visit Turku because that's where Miikka Kiprusoff from. Maybe I'll get some Kiprusoff gear, and if I ever go to Finland, assuming we ever get to travel again, or some Flames gear, just to see, anyone notice you're wearing a fellow Finn in Finland himself, and maybe I'll be lucky and bump into him himself in his hometown. But I can dream. So as I say, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fan's journey, home of the Flames, Hitmen, Roughnecks, and Stampeders, just make sure you hit like, subscribe. I also do talk Calgary sports on my YouTube channel, and so one of the things I've done is I look back on some Calgary Flames trade retrospects where I look back at all the big trades, both good and bad. This definitely was a great one to look back on, as it was, at the time, it didn't seem huge, but it definitely turned out to be huge. For the Calgary Flames, I would say the San Jose Sharks got something out of it too, as they got a long-time stud defenseman that's played over 1,000 games. I mean, at least they didn't get a rock. I would say a couple trade retrospects where I felt like we got a rock was when we made a few trades at the Toronto Maple Leafs, especially the Doug Gilmour trade. And fittingly, Sportsnet has recently had the Steve Dangle. He does like his trade trees. He actually talked about the Dion Phaneuf trade. I didn't think we got full value out of it, but Brian Burke, who was the general manager at the time of the Toronto Maple Leafs, who made that trade with Daryl Sutter, who made this trade with the Calgary Flames, in the story about trading away Dion Phaneuf, and essentially was we got Matt Stajan back, and everyone else didn't pay out. But interesting, that video recently came out. But I also do personal vlogs, attempt to comedy, and I also do share my experiences I'm on the road or at a sport event. So if that all sounds like it'd be interesting to watch too, follow along with this Calgary sports fan's journey. You know what you need to do, just make sure you like, subscribe. I also have my other social media links down in the description below for other ways you can follow me. And I do have a couple more trade retrospects that I plan to talk about. And usually I like to make these videos around the date that they were made. And for example, for this one, it was 17 years ago tonight that the Calgary Flames made this trade, and it turned out to be one of the faces of the franchise that we acquired. But there's another trade retrospect I'm going to look back on in a couple weeks, where the Calgary Flames made another trade that happened just before my time, to give a hint, and we brought back a player that I would say was one of the first faces of the franchise back then. I would say was famous for some particular hair, as I will give out in a couple weeks. So as I say, go Flames go, and I'll see you in the next video.